on the minds of many of our readers, and the order will start with Jerry in the District 20 race. 2 years ago, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have explicitly stripped the right to abortion from the state constitution. It was seen as a major victory for abortion rights supporters, but debate about abortion has continued in the 2 years since. Kansas lawmakers have debated dozens of bills seeking in some way to limit or impact abortion procedures in Kansas. It's widely expected that such measures will continue to come up next year if you're elected or re-elected, depending on your situation at the table. Do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws that in any way govern the procedure? Why or why not? Start with Jerry Charlton, 60 seconds.
I'm a practicing Catholic. I pray that one day abortion will be non-existent and that everybody will be fine with it. How do we get there? We got to talk about it. We've got to educate people about it. Pregnancy is preventable. As a male, I have 16 nephews. I can be a role model for them. We need male figures in our community. And I was quite surprised when the Supreme Court ruled on Dobbs that the majority of our media did not know that 26 countries in Europe had abortion laws that were at 12 to 16 weeks. That's 10 to 12 weeks over what our current state law is at 22 weeks. That's shocking. That's my position.
I'll ask each of you a follow-up question, so I'm not just singling you out here. I'll ask each of you a follow-up question kind of based on your first response. But for some readers, this is a matter of trusting women and their doctors to make personal private decisions. They see some moves to restrict abortion access to be invasive and also against the spirit of that 2022 vote. I'll just ask how you respond to that sentiment. Oh yeah, that's for you. Yeah. That's a follow-up question for you. Yeah. And I'll ask follow-up questions for each of you. But yeah, so the idea that this is a personal private decision for a woman and her doctor, that any moves to limit abortion now after the 2022 vote are kind of against the spirit of that vote in the majority of Kansans who rejected that amendment. Your response?
No, the choice is between the pregnant woman and her doctor if it regards health. Absolutely.
Okay. That it seems like, can you just kind of square that a little bit? Because your previous answer, you suggested...
Well, my previous comment was, I know one day that abortion will be non-existent. We are a reasonable species and we can talk about this. It just makes sense that this could be done.
We'll go to House District 20, Maryland Hoskins, stay in this race. And the question to you, do you support any new restrictions on abortion? Laws that may govern the procedure in any way? They're likely to come up next year in 2025. Your stance, why or why not?
Yeah, so District 20 voters, 72% rejected the August amendment. They want to keep legislators out of their doctor's offices. I'll fight to keep it that way. And this is a good time to remind all Kansas voters that every single Republican in both chambers voted no exceptions for the life of the mother on that amendment. We've seen tragedy unfold across the country since Roe fell. Women bleeding in ER parking lots, waiting to access life-saving care, losing reproductive capacity and being prosecuted for pregnancy losses. It's madness. Is this the vision they had for Kansas women? No, I will not support new restrictions on abortion and access to reproductive health.
And the follow-up question to you, we do have some readers who say there is a compelling state interest in protecting unborn life. Moves to do that by, say, allocating funding for pregnancy resource centers that promote alternatives to abortion, which the legislature has done. They see this as a way to make childbirth safer, support women during pregnancy. At least that's the reasoning. Your response to the idea that such laws do not infringe on the right to abortion but actually make women safer and the procedure safer?
Yeah, no, I think that they seek to stigmatize abortion. I think they seek to make it more difficult, make you answer 36 questions before you can get an abortion. The crisis pregnancy centers, I voted no on that because the American Medical Association Journal of Ethics says that those pregnancy crisis centers do not operate ethically, and we did not ask for any outcome information in that appropriation. No, I don't believe that those laws make it safer, or they definitely violate the spirit of the August 22 amendment.
Coming back to the other end of the table, District 19, Stephanie Clayton, do you support any new restrictions on abortion or laws in any way governing the procedure? Why or why not?
I do not, and I have a voting record that reflects that, and I am proud to stand up for that record. Regarding the crisis pregnancy centers, I am a member of the tax committee, and so was able to listen and engage directly in some of that testimony with some of the crisis pregnancy centers that came up. It is on YouTube. I can't cite exactly the date of that hearing, but there was one point where one of the crisis pregnancy center representatives implied that one could become pregnant by getting a vaccination. I do not think that tax breaks should be given to groups that do not promote science. I do support any sort of charity, of course, that would help any parent who wants to continue to raise their children, but I strongly oppose groups that are violently against science, and it is proven in that video that they are, and so I did not support that.
And just the follow-up question to you, responding to some abortion opponents and some readers we have who do express that there is a compelling state interest in protecting unborn life. How do you balance that?
I think one of the best ways that we can protect unborn life is by helping people who have young families or who want to start young families. I think we can all agree that it is very expensive to start a family now. So we can look at tax relief, we can look at assistance with childcare and early education. We can create an environment that is conducive to starting and growing a family, but if we make it hostile and if we shame people who are seeking proper abortion care, then that runs into a major problem. By and large, this is a choice of citizens, and when we have that choice, it should not be impeded by the state. The state should not determine whether a woman has been raped or whether a woman is dying or whether a woman has suffered, or a girl for that matter, from incest. So I believe in that strong fundamental constitutional right, and I'm proud to vote in order to support it.
And rounding out this question and remaining in the District 19 race, and Mark Hermas, do you support any new restrictions on abortion or any laws in any way governing the procedure, especially in light of the 2022 vote, as many readers have raised? Why or why not?
In the 1600s, the Quakers came over. There was abortion then, there's abortion now, there's been abortion all through human civilization. So we look at today and we say, okay, well, what were the laws back then, or what was the procedure or the practice or anything else? It was the quickening back there. The Quakes basically said abortion until quickening. Well, we can move that forward and we say, okay, well, they at least had restrictions at some point. I think that the bigger point is the societal, and that is provide opportunities, provide assistance to young women or any women that are expecting, and give them the options. As far as regulations go, I think the regulations fall in line of the same thing as the Quakers or anybody throughout history, and also that we support the procedures as far as regulations, or just making sure the procedures are safe, make sure the facilities are clean, and healthcare risks are reduced.
The question to you then, the follow-up is, again, for some readers, it's a matter of trusting women and their doctors to make personal private decisions. You raise some of the laws that are either on the books, safety standards, I know those have been challenged in court, but also some of the other measures that have come up in the previous 2 years. I think it was mentioned, the surveys and asking women questions while they're in a clinic. Many readers see these as either invasive or at the very least against the spirit of that 2022 vote. How do you respond to that?
First, I apologize. I did not read that specific legislation. As far as anything intrusive to anybody's personal space, I believe that it is a decision between doctor and the woman, and in the case be the father or husband in those particular cases. As far as any regulations that go with forms, documents, or anything else, if it's intrusive, it's intrusive. You just look at what it was and make that decision. I would be open either way.
Go to the next issue, and we're kind of running low on time. It's 7 o'clock, so probably time for maybe 2 more questions. We are going to forego closing statements just so we can get to as many issues as possible. And I will say it was a question asked by an audience member in the first forum, and I actually do think it kind of is still illustrative and gives you a chance to think on your toes and also contrast yourself with your opponent. So an audience member asked, what do you see as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent, and why are you running? And I believe the order has fallen to Mary Lynn Poskin to start this one off. And so, District 20, what do you see as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent, and why are you? 60 seconds.
60 seconds, all right. I want to speak directly to my House District 20 voters. You know, I keep you informed with in-depth emails and links and links and links if you want to dig deeper. I post on socials regularly so you know what's happening in Topeka. I respond to your emails and phone calls. I assist you with issues when you have government agency problems. I've gone to your children's funerals and vowed to expand mental health and pass suicide prevention bills with their names on my heart. I talk to our Girl Scout troops and high school panels. I serve on the Teacher of the Year panel. The list goes on, and I cherish every minute, even the hard stuff. I have a broad range of endorsements across education groups, labor groups, environmental groups. I am not aware of any that my opponent has earned yet, but the biggest endorsement is your vote. It's yard site season, and you can see that District 20 trusts me with their important issues and our shared values.
And I'm going to break protocol just a little bit. Jerry, you're out of order, but since this is so directly kind of about contrasting opponents, I'll give you a chance to go first before we move back to District 19. So the question to you, Jerry, what do you see as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent, and why are you running?
Thank you, Kyle. I'm a job creator. I've done that my entire career. I'm an engineer. I'm a problem solver. I'm an innovator. I know how to get things done. I operate budgets. I've operated budgets my entire career. Half my career has been in the energy industry, and it's not being talked about the right way. I could talk about this on a national level and get things changed. It's not being talked about. People don't know that our electrical grid is 35% efficient, and it's 1/5 of the entire energy that we use. Those other 8 units of energy that we use, again, that's where the energy conservation opportunity presents itself. We in Kansas City are fortunate to have world-renowned engineering firms that's focused on the energy industry. And I'm going to promote these companies, and we are going to drive down utility costs across the nation and change it across the globe as well.
Now moving to District 19, and Stephanie Clayton, the question from the audience member, what do you see as the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent, and why are you?
I always hate questions like this because it just seems so, I really admire my opponent and the fact that we have kept it very simple, and I really appreciate that. I think one of the biggest things that differentiates me from my opponent in the most politest of terms is my experience. And so one of the things that we've heard a lot and that we hear from a lot of challenging candidates is that they bring in new blood or that they are not a career politician. Well, trust me, this is one difficult career, and I have seen a lot of strange things in my many years. But it is important to have someone that knows exactly how people are going to come at things and try to mess with your tax dollars, try to mess with your education, and to understand that overall strategy and long game for bringing the best policies to the district as possible. This is my job, and again, this is something that I believe that I should be held accountable for every 2 years. I'm proud to run for re-election, and I am proud to bring the experience that I have because, again, I've seen a lot of strange things, and I know how to stop them.
Mark Ernest, the question to you from the audience member, how do you differ from your opponent, and why are you running?
I do respect Stephanie, and I also believe in term limits, but our experience and education and everything about it is pretty much different. But in that, I do come from farmland country, very well educated. I've been writing law since 2010, 2014. I started working with Jeff Coyer. I worked with Chris Kovach. I worked with Derek Schmidt, Cal Hayden, Mike Senny. But with that is that I killed a bill in the House started in the House. The president of the Kansas Bar wrote a bill I hated, and I killed it for 6 years with the help of the Senate committee. I can see where this is heading. I am here to do a job for the people of the 19th District, and I pretty much consider this as signing up for the Army. I know what's coming, and I'm prepared, and will serve our district and ask for your vote.
Well, let's fit at least one more issue-based question in before we go, and order's going to seem a little funky because I jumped out to give Jerry the chance to respond, but we'll start with Stephanie Clayton on this one and go down the line. So all of you get a chance to respond to this for 60 seconds. This question directly from a reader, so I'll quote him or her directly. Quote, in Kansas, the rate of gun deaths increased 32% from 2012 to 2021, and the rate of gun suicides increased 14% and gun homicides by 102%. End quote. That's data from the advocacy group Every Town for Gun Safety. The reader goes on, quote, "It is evident that we need to do something in Kansas to curb these growing numbers." That's their opinion. And so my question is there any piece of gun-related legislation you would support that you think would respond to these readers' concerns about gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not? 60 seconds, starting with Stephanie Clayton.
Well, my record is very clear on gun safety. It is strong and consistent. I have supported safe storage. I've supported red flag. And again, and I have opposed constitutional carry. And again, this is something that we don't talk about very much anymore, but it used to be that in order to carry a concealed weapon in Kansas, you had to go through training and get a license. And then we sort of did away with that, which is kind of a shame because you have a lot of really strong, responsible gun owners that worked to make sure that they were qualified to carry concealed, and we just sort of disrespected their efforts. And so I find that to be very disappointing. So I will continue to support these things, and I will continue to work with other colleagues to make sure that we can find ways to, bottom line, we want to mitigate death in our state. I think we can all agree on that.
Staying in House District, the House District 19 race, Mark Hermes, any gun-related legislation you would support that would respond to the readers' concerns about rising gun deaths and injuries in Kansas? Why or why not?
The gun issue, I am pro Second Amendment. I don't own a gun. I do support conceal and carry. The reason being that conceal and carry does carry training and also background checks to a greater degree. I actually went out to the Sheriff's Department to a gun training course. I loved it. I think everybody that has a gun should participate in something like that. So support training. The legislative side would be, maybe that's something Kansas should fund. The suicide issue is a bigger issue of mental wellness. I really worry about the new Gen A that's coming 2012 and newer children. We've got more issues with mental wellness and children that can lead to better future.
And follow-up question for both of you, both Stephanie and Mark. So Mark first, and I'll jump back to Stephanie. One reader in the audience specifically wants to know about background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage laws. Do you support these specific measures? We'll start with Mark. Any of those, the specific measures that you support, background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage?
I think that yes, first follow all the current laws and enforce them, and that includes background checks. Red flags are not bad. I would still have to that's a good idea. Anything red flag is a red flag, and that would mean gun ownership or gun possession would be a consideration. As far as the safety, depending on how the bill's written, if you're nobody goes into anybody's homes. That's just, it's safe storage is the parent's responsibility, the gun owner's responsibility. Legislation, I don't see how that would intrude past the front door of my house.
And to step back to Stephanie Clayton, these specific measures, I think you might have mentioned at least one of them in your previous answer, with background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage, any of these that you support or would want to push forward?
Yes, not only have I supported them, but I have sponsored and co-sponsored them, in particular background checks, especially regarding gun purchase at gun shows. And so I would also support, and I think this would make our insurance companies a lot of money, but insurance on firearms, because a motor vehicle can kill people. We are mandated to carry insurance, at least liability on that. We look at that, and that could also provide some protections, because oftentimes firearm accidents kill, but not always. Sometimes they maim people for life. And so you look at that financial hit that you can take from those injuries as well, and I think it might be something worth exploring.
We'll go back to District 20, and the question to you, and I might combine these to make it a little bit more efficient. So is there any piece of gun-related legislation, Jerry Charlton, that you would support that you think would reduce gun deaths and injuries per the reader's question, but also combine it with this question from the audience, specifically background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage, anything on your docket that you think you could support?
I would support all that legislation, but at the same time, the increase in crime rates here, gun crime here in our city is just an outgrowth of our larger cities. Where our larger cities, they're not prosecuting crime, and the consequences of crime, not prosecuting that, you have consequences, and we're not seeing that borne out in our prosecutors across our larger cities. It's just an outgrowth of what we're seeing here. So constitutional carry, I support constitutional carry. I believe there needs to be programs, training in order to carry, but also at the same time, it's preventing crime. There's a lot of cases across the country where citizens have their firearm and they're eliminating a crime in front of them.
And just to clarify, just to make sure, so the specific items about background checks, red flag laws, safe gun storage, you said you would support those measures if elected?
I'd have to take a look at the legislation in order to make a decision on that, but common sense prevails, I would believe.
And then rounding out this question, Merriam Posman, also in District 20, any gun-related legislation you would support if, in your case, re-elected, and specifically background checks, red flag laws, safe storage?
Yep. So, as a National Merit Scholar, I'm used to getting A's, but I'm really proud of the F rating I earned from the NRA. And don't get me wrong, I'm a gun owner myself and a supporter of the Second Amendment. But I earned that F by advocating for common sense gun safety regulations and against NRA curriculum being forced in our schools. You know, David and I were at the Chiefs Parade when the shooting happened last year, and I was on NPR's Up to Date about why we can't get common sense legislation through. Do you know what the legislature's response to the shooting was? That very next day, a bill was introduced to prevent state resources from being used to enforce federal gun laws. Know what didn't get a hearing? The safe storage bill, a bill allowing someone to voluntarily put themselves on a do not sell list. Thank you, Representative Bowsley, over there. When they are vulnerable. Nope, no hearing for those. I earned the Everytown Gun for Gun Safety Endorsement and Mom's Demands and Gun Sense Candidate Distinction. My 2020 opponent was an NRA-rated candidate. My 22 was an NRA-rated candidate whose rating disappeared, and my opponent did not fill it out. House 20 overwhelmingly supports common gun sense legislation, and I got you, District 20.
Final question, we're not going to do closing statements, but final question. I believe the order has fallen to Mark Herman, so each of you gets 1 minute. We're going to go slightly over 7:15. I apologize for that, but just want to get this last issue in because it really was the most asked about issue that we got from readers, at least via email, over the last month. It is related to elections. Recent years in Kansas, as well as in Johnson County, those elections have gone off without a hitch, according to both state and local election officials. Many readers expressed bewilderment, even a little bit of anger or umbrage at continued suggestions that there are widespread problems with local and Kansas elections. Many readers still seem to take candidates' views on election integrity as a litmus test of sorts. So do you trust Kansas election systems, and if elected, would you seek to put any new limits or rules around voting in Kansas? We'll start with Mark Hermas in the District 19 race. 1 minute for each of you.
First, I do trust the American process of elections, and I do trust the elections as we have them. Anything and everything can be improved, voter cleanup, all of that, but it's one step at a time. So I never, just don't look back and look forward, and that forward is our elections will get better, and we can learn and basically make sure that the integrity of the votes is secure.
Any specific limits, procedures, rules that you would want that you've seen the legislature debate over the last couple of years that you would support, or any ideas that you've seen in other states?
Very good question. I would look strictly at the voter cleanups as far as you look at the numbers of registered voters versus populations, and when you start looking at that, you just, it might be curious as far as just cleanup, but as far as the integrity of the election, I believe in it, and I just believe that as anything, we can make things better.
You're talking about cleaning up voter rolls of people who are registered to vote. Jerry Charlton, in the District 20 race, any limits or rules to elections that you would support if elected?
Well, for one, Kansas does it right. We use voter ID. Last year's November 7th, 2023 election, I attended the presentation that Fred Sherman, the Johnson County election chairman, gave to the Johnson County Board of Commissioners. It was very impressive. He had a list of uncured ballots, mail-in ballots that lacked signature, and he described how those were cured. And so Kansas does it right, and I wish all states would use voter ID.
So it sounds like Kansas does it right. You don't see any need for any further limits, procedures, rules?
Like Mark said, cleaning up the voter rolls is the main thing with regards to what, if anything, needs to be done.
Merriam Posman, also in District 20, this question to you. Any election-related measures you would seek to put any new limits or rules on if, in your case, re-elected to the legislature?
I agree with my opponent. Kansas elections are safe, secure, and they're run very, very well. Our Secretary of State, Scott Schwab, has said since he was elected that that is the case in Kansas. Our Johnson County Election Office does an outstanding job. I do want to thank the poll workers who make it all happen. And I think if you served as a poll worker, you would see just how safe and how procedurally sound our elections are. I do want to say that there have been repeated attempts to remove the 3-day grace period, and as the mom of 7 fabulous children who have voted from out of state at college, I can tell you that that is an absolute disgrace. If the ballot is postmarked, it meets the 3-day grace period. Our mail service has gotten worse, not better. And that bill, by the way, was 124 to 1 passing the House.
And that's a reference to the 3 days after
Correct,
election.
the 3-day
the-
grace
the-
period.
The
Yep.
mail-in ballot can get there by Friday and still be counted.
Correct.
Stephanie Clayton, back in District 19, your thoughts on election-related measures, you see any need to put any new limits or rules around voting and elections in Kansas?
I do not, like everyone up here, and that is quite a relief to hear. I do think that we are doing things right. I had the honor of serving with Secretary Schwab when he was a member of the House. And when Scott was in the House, he was very much known as a rule follower. And so because of that, I trust him in the work that he does implicitly, and I trust the work that Fred Sherman does. I think that our elections are not only secure, but they are sacred. And I hope that everyone thinks about that as we do our research and as we head into the next election. I really want to thank you for hosting us, Johnson County Post. And
This is my job. This is
yeah,
my
it's,
job.
and you know, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Make sure you do all of your research. And again, thank you for allowing me to serve. And I hope I have the opportunity to serve you again.
We'll give them a round of applause for participating tonight. For the members of the We've got another thing on our business, so I won't belabor the point, but the deadline to register to vote is October 15th, and then early voting starts on October 19th, and of course, Election Day is November 5th, so please go out and vote. Thank you for watching this form of Johnson County Post.